So these are both correct English, but again, native speakers, when you're talking in a casual and conversational way or a casual and conversational situation, people would just say, I bet. So I bet something will happen. I bet it will happen. Next, if I am at an office and I am explaining to someone that I am doing something right now, maybe creating something, I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm in the process of doing that thing right now. So I am attempting to finish my project, or I am in the process of completing my project, or am in the process of starting my project. In the process of and attempting to do something, you can use these in conversational speech, but instead of using these, which again you would use more in a professional setting, we often use I'm trying to do something. So I'm trying to get to the airport. So if people say, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, I'm trying to get to the airport. So this is a conversational way of saying I want to do something, or I am attempting to do something. But again, it's faster to say this, and if you contrast these two in a conversational situation, if I say to my friend, oh, I'm attempting to get to the airport right now, he would say, well, why are you speaking like that? That's a quite formal way of expressing yourself. So I would normally say, yeah, I'm trying to get to the airport. But trying to, this is a really common thing. If you listen for this word trying, native speakers will often use this to kind of soften their language. So they don't say, I'm going to the airport. Usually we say, I'm trying to get to the airport. So I'm moving in some way. I'm in the process of doing something, but we describe this as trying to do something, to try to do something. Next, we're going to look at let's say and let's just say. These are related, but their meanings are different. So let's cover them individually. The first one is let's say. Now, this is a conversational way of expressing yourself to talk about giving an example. In a more professional environment, you might say, for example, and then go into an example of something. So we are thinking about maybe offering some new products for the company. For example, we might introduce, a new hand cream and something like this. But you could also say in a more casual environment, instead of saying, yeah, I went to, maybe I'm talking to a friend of mine and I say, let's say I want to go to, whatever. So I'm like trying to give an example of a place I want to go for vacation. So you might say, oh, where do you want to go? I'd say, oh, let's say, I don't know, Hawaii. So I'm just using that as an example. I say, for example, so I'm describing it as an example, and I say, we're going to talk about Hawaii right now. So let's say I want to get to Hawaii. And like I'm explaining, here's the thing I'm, trying to give an example of. So I might not actually be trying to get to Hawaii, but I'm explaining that in a conversational way. So as an example, I want to go to Hawaii. Let's say I want to go to Hawaii. How do I get there? So let's say. So for example, as an example, how do I get there? Now, let's just say, this is related, but it's still a different meaning. Let's just say is often used as a way of summarizing something. So maybe I want to give an explanation of something, but then at the end, I might summarize that. And for maybe a business meeting, I might be giving a presentation and then say, in summary, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So I give a long, maybe 20-minute presentation, and then at the end, I speak for one more minute and say, okay, we're going to summarize what we've just talked about today. In summary, we're going to do this. But if I say, let's just say, typically this is in a more casual conversational situation where I'm describing something and then I want to just say, all right, well, let's kind of forget about this long way of explaining it and let's just say this. So I can describe, as an example, let's say I'm talking about a friend of mine who is really sick. So he had maybe some heart problem and a headache and all these other things, and I'm trying to describe a really long thing in detail to explain what is actually happening with him. But maybe the person is getting bored or whatever, and I say, okay, let's just say he's really sick. So let's just say, like, let's agree to say that he's really sick. So in this way, I'm not really giving an example. I'm trying to give a summary in some way, but make it kind of easier to say. The final thing I'll mention about let's just say is that you'll often hear people when they want to express something one way but not use it maybe in that same language. Now this is kind of a tricky idea, but often let's say you're maybe talking in front of your children and you don't want them to hear something you're talking about. So I'm maybe talking about like let's say I'm at my friend. So again, I'm using let's say. So let's say I'm at my friend's house. I'm giving an example. So let's say I'm at my friend's house and he has a daughter that's 2 years old, and I'm talking about some girl that I met, and I say, oh, we had like a really great time, and like I'd like to go into detail or describe maybe what happened, but I say, well, let's just say the evening was very good. And he understands what I'm talking about. So again, it's that same way of taking something, but you're summarizing it in kind of a different way or using different language for that. So instead of giving a long detailed thing, it's almost like, let's forget about all that stuff I just said, but here's the same thing in a slightly easier way. Let's just say. Next, we have a quite simple and interesting one. Typically, people will use why in conversations, and why is a typically good word to use. Why, there's certainly no problem with using it in a professional or an academic or even a casual situation, but typically people will kind of make their language a bit softer, as I explain in videos, where to make your language softer really just means you're not trying to say exactly what you want to say in a forceful way, so you're kind of saying it in a way that, maybe you're not being direct, especially if you have maybe a criticism of someone or you're trying to give them some kind of helpful feedback. Say, maybe you might not want to wear that dress. So I wouldn't say, wow, that dress is ugly. Like, nobody wants to hear that. And the person is just going to get mad at me. So if I say, maybe you might not want to do that. So this is a case where I'm saying, well, I want to say something directly, but for political reasons, we're people dealing with each other, so we have to kind of change our speech, make our speech a little bit softer. So it's really about speaking in a less direct and less straightforward way. So in this case, you can use the word why, but if you talk to someone and you say, why did you do this? Like if you're asking someone, especially in that situation, why does this happen, or why do you do this? And in that way, you seem like you're kind of accusing someone. So a lawyer might say, why did you do this? And like you're sitting there with someone and you're talking with them, and you're really asking them some questions and being kind of direct with that, or quite direct with that. But in a conversational way, people often use how come. So how come you're always late? How come you're always late? Instead of why are you always late? So notice how it's the same thing. I'm asking the same question, but how come becomes a slightly kind of maybe nicer and softer way of expressing this. So how come? How come you're late? But I can, again, use this for not just describing things to other people or saying things to other people. I could say, how come it always rains when we go to the park? How come it always rains when we go to the park? So I could say, why does it always rain? But again, if you want to sound more casual and conversational, how come? How come? And finally, whatsoever.